My sister has been enabling her children's criminal behavior, which has resulted in the ruination of the neighborhood. Upon returning home from work, I discovered that my shed door was open and the padlock that I had previously utilized to secure it was damaged. I observed a considerable quantity of soda cans within the shed, which I had accumulated due to my proclivity for consuming soda. Consequently, I constructed a storage structure for these cans. I proceeded to stack a considerable number of cans, intending to redeem them at the bottle drop point in the near future. However, upon returning to the shed, I discovered that not only had my cans been removed, but also a number of gardening tools, a machete, and a gas can. I promptly accessed the security footage and observed that, shortly after I had departed for work in the morning, my 3 nephews had gained access to the shed by breaking in. My shed was accessed using a hammer to smash the lock and the cans were taken, along with other items. I contacted my sister, who initially denied her children's involvement. However, after I presented her with footage from my security cameras, she and her husband acknowledged their children's actions. They expressed displeasure with their children for committing the robbery and for skipping school to do so. I obtained the other items were returned, but the gas can was emptied. My nephews had already spent the money from the cans on video games and junk food. I demanded to know how much they had received from the cans, and it was nearly $200. I informed my sister that she now owed me over $200 for the cans and the broken padlock. My sister and Bill initially expressed anger at their children, but then shifted to making excuses for them. They then became angry at me for requesting the money back, despite being aware that they have 3 children and a mortgage. I informed them that I would either pursue legal action or contact the police. They instructed me to leave the premises. They have been given a deadline of 2 days to determine how they will repay me before I am forced to take the matter to the police. My nephews have a history of theft, having previously stolen from me. That is why I installed the security cameras. While I recognize that my nephew's actions were wrong, I am also aware that my sister and Bill are unable to afford to repay me. They have been contacting me repeatedly via telephone. They accused me of being heartless for giving them an ultimatum, despite my awareness that they were nearly broke after the holidays. I decided to take the initiative and contact the police. I attempted to collaborate with my sister and Bill when I called them this morning, as I was reluctant to wait until after they had finished work to speak with them. Not only did they decline any proposed method of repayment, but they also asserted that I was culpable for placing the cans there in the first place. They claimed that I had enticed my nephews with the money, which incensed me to the point of declaring my intention to sever all ties with them. However, they proceeded to inundate me with calls. My eldest nephew sent me I provided the police with a written account of the incident and submitted a copy of the video footage of my nephew stealing from my shed. I also provided them with the broken lock and screenshots of the relevant text messages. As evidence, I provided the police with a photograph of my eldest nephew flipping me off. I am unsure if my nephews have been arrested yet, but I have been informed that they will be. It is possible that community service will alter their behavior. I informed the police that I was concerned about the machete that my nephews had taken. As anticipated, the items were classified as tools, particularly given the presence of numerous other tools aside from the machete. These included gardening shears, a steel rake, 2 shovels, one of which was a folding camping shovel, a 2-gallon gas can, and a low-cost power drill that had been purchased for approximately $5. In addition, they took an electric hedge trimmer and a small electric chainsaw, which were also used. They did not touch the lawn mower, weed whacker extension cords, or the old radio that I had in there. The reason for their actions is unclear, but it is possible that they intended to resell the items. However, I was able to recover all of the items, with the exception of the gas that was in the gas can is a mystery. It is unclear what use they found for it, but it was old gas. After initially breaking into the shed, the perpetrators took what they could by hand. They then returned with shopping carts, which are likely among the items they stole. However, it took them several trips to collect all the cans. They did not even attempt to conceal their actions. It is imperative that the door be closed when they are finished, regardless of the circumstances. My nephews are now facing legal consequences for trespassing and harassment. I anticipate a significant influx of calls from law enforcement regarding these individuals, but I have made my position clear: I will not yield. I am now demanding a refund. They had their chance, and they failed to seize it. I have replaced the lock on the shed with a much stronger one, and I will no longer keep the machete in the shed. I have also discussed the incident with several neighbors. They informed me that cans have been going missing in the neighborhood recently. A bag of cans left outside would be stolen. I am unable to confirm whether my nephews were responsible, but if they were, they have been engaged in this activity for several months. I have also spoken with my relatives, who have expressed frustration with my sister and Bill. They have indicated that they support me, which is encouraging to know. I was concerned that they might turn on me. I filed a police report, but I have not yet received any assistance. It is long overdue for the perpetrators to face legal consequences. I was not the only member of the family who was victimized. Many individuals commented that I should accept responsibility for my nephew's actions. However, I was not willing to do so. My nephews are reluctant to engage in any form of labor. They often engage in idle chatter and act as if the world is against them, requiring constant supervision. I am not inclined to provide such supervision, especially given that I have previously asked them to leave my residence. Their misappropriation of property began with food and snacks and subsequently expanded to other items. Regarding DVDs and video games, I began marking my initials on cases and discs with permanent markers to demonstrate when my nephews had taken something of mine. They attempted the "Goops, he let us borrow them" excuse on a few occasions, but I consistently contacted them and required the return of the items they had taken. They consistently presented themselves as though I were the unreasonable one, and then, when they were compelled to apologize to me, their apologies were, in my estimation, insincere. The final incident that resulted in my banning my nephews from my house was when they used the spare hidden key to gain access to my residence and stole 3 six-packs of my preferred blood orange beer. The beer from my refrigerator, along with other items from my kitchen, were consumed by the individuals in question. One of them defecated in my bathroom and, rather than flushing it, also urinated on the floor. They attempted to claim that it was not them, but I was certain that the beer they had stolen was even hidden in their room. My sister and Bill were not pleased. I subsequently punished them and essentially offered them an equivalent to the rationale of "boys will be boys." However, I was berated when I stated that they and their offspring were no longer welcome at my residence permanently. This was the primary motivation behind my decision to install surveillance cameras. I informed no individual about this decision, which proved to be a prudent choice, as my nephews were unaware of their presence. It is evident that the perpetrators targeted my shed, which was the most accessible location. I intend to install additional surveillance cameras within my residence, and I am currently in the process of upgrading them. However, it is noteworthy that my nephews were apprehended by the authorities on Saturday. The police arrived at their residence, and my sister and Bill were compelled to admit them due to the issuance of a warrant. It is apparent that all 3 individuals were involved. My nephews exhibited a notable transformation in demeanor, from a previously arrogant and self-assured disposition to a state of emotional distress and vulnerability when placed in handcuffs. I am privy to this observation as a neighbor, with whom I am on friendly terms and who maintains a connection with my sister, was present to witness the event. Subsequent to the arrest, my sister and Bill proceeded to inundate me with calls and messages. However, they were unable to reach me. The boys were released from jail until Monday morning, and now they are facing charges of larceny, willful destruction of property, vandalism, and harassment. The police have treated this case with the utmost seriousness, as there have been complaints about my nephews for some time. However, no action was taken until now. It has been reported that bags of cans have been going missing in the area. It is unclear whether my nephews are responsible for this, but they are likely suspects. With word spreading of their arrest, it is hoped that other neighbors with security cameras will come forward with more footage. My sister and Bill also showed up at my house, but I refused to open the door. I informed them that their actions were enabling their children to evade accountability for their actions, which resulted in further aggressive behavior. I warned them that I would contact the authorities if they did not cease their actions. Having already contacted the police, they knew I was serious and subsequently departed without further incident. Despite the difficulties, the individuals in question persisted in contacting me via telephone. I did not block my sister or Bill. Instead, I chose to retain all messages sent to me. I intend to pursue legal action in small claims court regarding this matter. Monetary compensation is not a primary objective, and I have already replaced the damaged padlock. However, the children are not the only ones who require instruction. Ultimately, I hope to have instilled in them a profound understanding of the consequences of their actions, such that they will refrain from similar behavior in the future. I am also grateful for the unwavering support of my family, including my parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. They have all expressed solidarity with me in this matter. Furthermore, my nephews have also been involved in criminal activities, including theft. After banning them from my residence, some of them continued their illicit actions. I intend to pursue a sentence of community service for my nephews, not merely as a beneficial measure, but also to inflict a form of retribution that they will find particularly onerous. They evade work they do not want to do, instead engaging in idle chatter and adopting a victimized stance, as though the world is against them. As a result, little is accomplished. Perhaps a few hundred hours of unpaid work will instill some discipline and teach them manners. They have been indulged to excess. Update 3. This is disappointingly anticlimactic. I had assumed that my sister and Bill were initially reluctant to concede, but they ultimately did so. I filed a lawsuit in small claims against them for their children's actions. I sought $500 in damages, including for the stolen cans, the damaged lock, the cost of a replacement lock, which was of superior quality and costlier, and the expense of filing with the courts. Additionally, I sought compensation for emotional distress caused by the harassment. A friend whose father is a lawyer provided me with a free consultation and advised me to pursue legal action. The evidence I have gathered, including video footage of the thefts and the physical altercation at my residence, as well as the messages sent by my sister and Bill following the lawsuit, provides a compelling case against them. Their reactions were highly emotional, and they expressed disbelief at the lawsuit, stating that I was wrong to take legal action. I responded by stating that their failure to effectively parent their children has resulted in a sense of entitlement and a proclivity for criminal behavior. I made it clear that any further communication would have to occur in a legal setting. Should they elect to remit the $500 in question, I shall terminate the call. Yesterday evening, I was entertaining friends after work. We were relaxing and viewing a film, as none of us were inclined to engage in video games, given our fatigue from the day and desire for an unhurried evening. However, I received a visit from my sister and Bill. Upon observing them from my vantage point, they appeared displeased. I opened the door but left the screen door ajar and inquired about their purpose in my residence. They informed me that they were exhausted from the conflict and acknowledged the gravity of their actions. They sought reconciliation. My companions were positioned behind me, serving as witnesses to this event. Bill then placed an envelope containing $500 in $50 bills through a gap in the door. He stated that the funds originated from his personal savings account. He further asserted that, henceforth, they would ensure that my nephews would face consequences for their actions. However, this did not occur. I was asked to drop the charges, but was also implored to show clemency. I asserted that I was merely advocating for community service, which is a relatively lenient sentence. If we cooperate with that, I suggested, the judge might be persuaded to accept it. They acknowledged my stance and said they would cooperate if that was my sole demand. They then departed without making any further fuss. My friends subsequently commended me for maintaining my composure, and other members of my family did the same. It was only then that I learned from my parents that they had actually threatened to disown my sister if she, and despite my sister and her husband's initial reluctance to implement positive changes, they eventually did so. While this transformation may have been forced, it is the most significant improvement we have witnessed. My mother subsequently visited my sister and Bill after they repaid me. She informed me that my nephews were no longer engaged in video gaming activities. All video game-related items were stored securely, as was the television that my nephews previously used for gaming and watching movies. My nephews were primarily confined to their rooms and exhibited discourteous and unwelcoming behavior towards their grandmother. However, my sister asserts that they are addressing the matter, and thus I have discontinued the lawsuit, having received the desired compensation. Nevertheless, my nephews are still facing legal action for theft and are now receiving the disciplinary guidance they should have received long ago. Additionally, I have been informed that they will not be permitted to visit my residence in the near future and are to be restricted to either their place of education or their home. It is my understanding that my nephews will not be welcome at my house for an extended period. My sister and Bill are now essentially as a result, they are now required to perform the parenting duties that they should have been fulfilling previously. Furthermore, those who are not directly involved in the situation have expressed support for this decision, as my nephews had effectively alienated the majority of those around them. Regarding the installation of additional cameras, I have placed one above the shed, which provides comprehensive coverage of the surrounding area. It is notable that my sister, Bill, and my nephews have acknowledged the necessity of modifying their behavior as a result of this experience. However, this does not extend to my eldest nephew, who has demonstrated a reluctance to accept the consequences of his actions. He was unable to relinquish his desire for retribution and attempted to pursue it in this setting. The sequence of events is as follows. The court did not impose a sentence of more than 100 hours for each individual, as the parents of the defendants had already compensated the plaintiffs when the case was settled out of court. Consequently, the presiding judge expedited the proceedings. The defendants were assigned to perform manual labor, including garbage collection and park maintenance, under the supervision of a former military instructor. This experience was particularly challenging for the eldest defendant, who demonstrated a proclivity for defiance and disciplinary issues. There were frequent altercations with those who instructed him to work. His father was required to intervene merely to have the boy collect a rake. The child openly attributed his circumstances to me, and his brothers initially supported him. However, they subsequently recognized his erratic behavior and perceived him as entitled. Consequently, my two younger nephews ceased following his lead, recognizing the gravity of their actions. The issue is that my sister and Bill attributed the rift in their family to me. The situation did not conclude favorably for them, as no member of the family expressed support for their actions. The responsibility for the situation was attributed to them and their perceived poor parenting. Without me to blame, they became silent and resentful. Half the family chose to disassociate themselves from them, and now their own children are divided because the eldest refuses to change. The situation reached a point where my eldest nephew resorted to an act of such stupidity that it is difficult to believe. In the middle of the night, he sneaked out and assaulted my house. The perpetrator was armed with a pair of his father's claw hammers. He proceeded to smash the new lock on my shed with considerable force, causing significant damage to the point of rendering it unusable. I was subsequently compelled to remove it with bolt cutters. Additionally, he caused extensive damage to the shed door with the hammer claws. I awoke to the sounds of the hammers and immediately contacted the police after observing someone outside hitting the shed through my bedroom window. I initially failed to recognize the perpetrator, as he was wearing a mask that made him appear quite sinister. He then threw a hammer through my bedroom window. The resulting shards of glass posed a significant hazard, as I was barefoot and could have easily cut my feet on them. My nephew then began striking my back door with the remaining hammer, causing significant damage. He broke the knob and window on the door and also damaged the door itself with a hammer claw. I was concerned that the door might not withstand further assault. I remained in place, shouting for the police to arrive. The perpetrator departed before their arrival. The night vision camera revealed that the individual was the same person who had previously been apprehended. He was wearing a mask and a school hoodie, as well as Nike shoes that were distinctive. His fingerprints were also on the hammer that he had thrown through my window. My nephew's fingerprints had already been taken when they were arrested. The police matched the fingerprints on the hammer to the individual in question. My eldest nephew initially denied involvement, yet there was no other plausible suspect. The other hammer was discovered in his room, along with a mask and clothes, which were subsequently seized as evidence. The mask depicted a character from the Star Wars franchise, specifically the Grand Inquisitor. However, despite the presence of a parent or guardian, the individual in question was not protected, and no attempt was made to attribute blame to me. Instead, the parents merely observed the arrest, which was conducted in a highly public setting. My sister informed me that my eldest nephew was alternately expressing remorse and blaming me for his predicament. He was subsequently subjected to a comprehensive psychological assessment, which indicated a potential bipolar disorder diagnosis. While this may provide a partial explanation for his actions, it does not excuse his behavior. Following a more definitive bipolar disorder diagnosis, the individual in question began attributing his misdeeds to his condition, portraying himself as a victim of societal condemnation for seeking treatment. However, he ultimately spent a month in juvenile detention. Following a lengthy period of incarceration in juvenile detention, my nephew was duly medicated and entered a plea of guilty. In exchange for further community service and mandatory counseling, as well as probation, he was released from custody once more. His father, however, chose to make amends by personally replacing the broken window and door at my residence. Despite my attempts to engage him in conversation, he remained largely silent throughout the process. My two younger nephews, however, continue to exclude the older brother has been largely unresponsive to the situation, and has yet to offer an apology for the attack on my home. Additionally, he is repeating a school year due to a significant decline in academic performance, a decision that has not been well received by his parents. In July, my two younger nephews visited me independently to express their regret. They stated that they have consistently followed their brother's lead. Furthermore, he made everything they were doing seem so enjoyable. However, the consequences for their misdeeds were not commensurate with the level of enjoyment they were deriving from their actions. As a result, they have lost interest in pursuing further involvement. They have expressed a desire to rekindle the relationship with their uncle and have inquired about the possibility of a fresh start. I have informed them that this is an option, but that they will have to demonstrate a willingness to regain my trust, which they have indicated they are prepared to do. A few months ago, he essentially received no punishment at all, not even a cake. This was part of his punishment for his actions. I can only imagine how much money he has cost his parents in the past year alone. He led his brothers to steal from me and then destroyed my bedroom window and back door. I imagine that, in total, the cost to them of replacing both the door and window, in addition to the lawsuit I previously filed, was over $1,000. The cost of replacing doors and windows is considerable. Meanwhile, my youngest nephew celebrated his birthday a month later and received a new mountain bike as a gift. This caused considerable distress to my eldest nephew, who slashed the tires on the bike with a kitchen knife, resulting in further disciplinary action. I possess some knowledge about bicycle repair, so I purchased new tubes and tires for the bike and fixed them myself. My eldest nephew expressed gratitude for this assistance. I procured new tubes and tires for the bicycle and installed them, thus restoring the vehicle to its original condition. My nephew expressed considerable gratitude for my assistance. My eldest nephew, in an act of defiance, attempted to flee the situation, leaving his residence with a backpack containing various belongings and a bicycle. His parents promptly filed a missing person report, citing a farewell note that held me and his bipolar disorder responsible for his difficulties. In the note, he expressed a desire to leave their custody as soon as he reached the age of 18, suggesting that his actions were beneficial to himself and to them. However, he returned 3 days later. Without his bicycle or backpack, he appeared to be in a state of exhaustion. He was reluctant to divulge the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. The precise details remain unknown, but he was strongly reprimanded for repeatedly attributing his personal difficulties to me. This was identified as a key issue following his return. It should be noted that I did not instigate or encourage him to engage in criminal activities. I did not compel him to flee the residence. That decision was entirely his own. He nearly faced another period of incarceration for violating the terms of his probation. However, he was ultimately exonerated. Presently, he spends the majority of his time in his room, unless he is attending school, performing chores, or participating in counseling sessions. He has completed his community service requirement. His probation will last until he reaches the age of 18. He was granted some leniency due to his diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but this did not absolve him of responsibility. It is evident that he attempted to use this diagnosis as an excuse for his actions on numerous occasions. However, it is important to note that many individuals live with the same mental condition throughout their lives. Furthermore, he has never engaged in such behavior. I have been attempting to reconcile with my two younger nephews, but I am reluctant to interact with the eldest. It is evident that he harbors similar sentiments. I have only seen him in person once in recent months, and his demeanor was characterized by a level of animosity that I have never witnessed from anyone. Before departing, he is unable to portray me as the antagonist without being confronted on it, so he is essentially limited to merely attempting to persevere through this ordeal. Since the commencement of the academic year, he has exhibited a notable decline in communication, even within the confines of the educational institution. My other nephews have informed me that he is the subject of ridicule. Furthermore, he has been ostracized, which is unlikely to facilitate his recovery. My sister and Bill are also currently experiencing difficulties in their relationship with me. However, they cannot ascribe any blame to me, as they are aware that the responsibility lies with them and their inadequate parenting. I have essentially compelled them to become more active in their children's lives. These individuals should have been fulfilling this obligation long ago. They frequently express fatigue from their professional endeavors and the necessity of monitoring their offspring. Consequently, our interactions have become strained and perfunctory. They do not visit my residence, nor do I visit theirs. However, we do convene at my parents' house, where our mother requires that we conduct ourselves in a civil manner. I have no issue with this, as my two younger nephews have largely regained their privileges. They have been permitted to resume using their television and video games. However, my eldest nephew is not permitted to use them at all. I have been informed that he has some electronic entertainment in his room, but I am unaware of the specific type. I have observed that he spends the majority of his time in that room. Unless he has to be elsewhere, my eldest nephew is also not welcome in the family. I have recently been informed by my parents that they do not wish to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year, as they are tired of his behavior and petty thievery. I can understand this decision. While I agree that such a response may be warranted, I believe it is somewhat excessive. My sister and Bill also concur, as they have threatened to boycott the holidays if he is unable to attend. I have a strong dislike for that child and would not want him in my house, so I can comprehend why they have made this decision. However, I do not believe that completely excluding him from all social interactions is an appropriate course of action. It is evident that the entire family is attempting to facilitate positive change in the eldest nephew. However, it is unclear whether this will be an expedient process, given the potential for further disruptive behavior. It is possible that the individual may attempt to flee once of age, unless the previous incident has sufficiently deterred him. Nevertheless, it is hoped that circumstances will improve over time. If it is not too late to modify his behavior, I may not care for him, but he is still my nephew, and I am concerned about his well-being. However, I am unable to take any action, so for now, the most I can do is refrain from involvement and offer support when possible. Update 5. I had hoped to provide a more favorable update for everyone after the holidays, but the situation did not improve. It began to stabilize, but then deteriorated once more. After a period of adjustment, the situation is now, for the most part, within acceptable parameters. I did not post an update earlier because I believed it would be more beneficial to wait. I had drafted this update several months ago but decided to wait a while to see if the situation would improve. However, the situation did not improve, so I waited. A considerable amount of time has elapsed since the previous update, during which the situation has remained relatively stable. Therefore, this will serve as the final update on the subject, who was previously referred to as the Devil Snake due to his ability to tempt his nephews with a seemingly endless supply of cans. A comprehensive recap of the events that have transpired since the previous update is beyond the scope of this post. For those interested in learning more, it is recommended to refer to the earlier updates. To provide context, last year, instead of attending Thanksgiving with my parents, my sister and Bill went to their parents' house. My eldest nephew's behavior was also a source of concern at the event. However, he did not engage in any disruptive actions, at least according to the information shared with others. My sister and Bill also engaged in a lengthy discussion with our parents about the implications of excluding my nephew. I advised them that it would not be beneficial for his mental state at that time, and I concurred with their decision. Given the circumstances, it was likely that my nephew would only feel resentment. Consequently, my parents acquiesced and permitted him to attend Christmas Eve services. I procured a gift for him, but in early December, I sought to assist him in improving his mental state. I procured a second-hand bicycle from the local second-hand store. It was in need of minor repairs, but it was an excellent purchase for $30. I also learned that, since his functional backpack was stolen, he was using an old one that belonged to one of his brothers. I obtained a second-hand backpack at the same second-hand store. I purchased the bicycle from a local second-hand store for approximately $5. I then proceeded to repair the bicycle and wash the backpack. On the following Sunday, I presented both items to him. His reaction was one of complete shock, and he expressed gratitude for the gifts. He began using the bicycle and backpack to commute to and from school. Similarly, my sister and Bill were also taken aback by my actions, particularly given that I had previously gifted him a bicycle and backpack. Despite the fact that I had replaced the items that had been stolen from him during his violent attack on my house, the gifts had the desired effect. He ceased to express his anger towards me. He had been seeking any opportunity to portray me as the malevolent individual responsible for his misfortune. However, I was not the source of his distress when I next encountered him. It was at the family Christmas Eve celebration, and while there, my sister and Bill compelled him to express remorse for directing his anger towards me. They loomed over him like shadows while he spoke with me. I was instructed to maintain eye contact with him on numerous occasions. During his apology, he acknowledged that his actions were wrong and that they were not my fault. He was subsequently arrested. He had previously stolen from me and damaged my property. He promised to refrain from such behavior in the future. We shook hands, and he did not cause any trouble at the party. However, his parents were present and closely monitoring him throughout the evening. That evening, they did not leave him alone at all. They might as well have had him on a leash. It was awkward, but I can understand why they would put a lot on the line just so he could be allowed to come to Christmas at New Year's. However, things took a turn for the worse. My eldest nephew stole a bottle of champagne from his parents. He consumed the entire bottle of champagne in a short period of time while locked in the bathroom, before anyone could intervene. He had previously requested a drink and was informed that he was too young to consume alcohol. Consequently, he procured one of the bottles and proceeded to consume it rapidly. This information was not previously known to us, but it transpired that he had been engaged in the illicit acquisition of alcohol for a considerable period prior to his first arrest. He had been maintaining a secret supply, which he gradually consumed. A concealed cache of alcohol was discovered in his possession. It was evident that he had been consuming the alcohol in small quantities over an extended period. He had even sold some of it to other children in the neighborhood. However, he was not subjected to severe disciplinary action. Instead, he was sent to his room for the night. He had stated that he had stolen the alcohol because he was experiencing a strong craving at the time, which coincided with New Year's Eve. The brothers subsequently disclosed the location of the stash to their parents. It was a plastic tub concealed in the crawl space beneath the house. When questioned about the source of the alcohol, the two younger nephews admitted to following their brother's example and only stealing one beer at a time or pouring some hard. They proceeded to transfer the alcohol from its original bottle into another bottle, incrementally. The most significant revelation was that they had been clandestinely accessing other residences and replicating their modus operandi throughout the neighborhood. Their method of infiltration involved seeking out unsecured doors and windows. They avoided residences with dogs, as the barking would have alerted the occupants. The youngest perpetrator would gain access to the premises through the windows, as he was the smallest, and then unlock the doors to allow his siblings entry. They ensured that no significant items were taken from the houses, so that they could return on multiple occasions. However, following their apprehension last year, they came to realize that they no longer derived pleasure from their criminal activities. The children were merely following their siblings' example, as they had previously stated. However, they were still in trouble for not disclosing this information earlier. Despite our attempts to maintain secrecy, we were still discovered. This substantiated the suspicions of our neighbors, particularly given the proficiency of my nephews, and it would be reasonable to assume that cat burglars would be more mindful of cameras. Alternatively, it is possible that the perpetrators assumed that their uncle would never install cameras. However, following the exposure of the perpetrators as thieves, several neighbors, including the author's sister and brother-in-law, installed cameras. The consequences for admitting to the thefts were minor. The consequences for my nephews were relatively minor. For the eldest, it was somewhat redundant, given his ongoing probationary status and the fact that he had not attempted to steal anything else until he took the bottle of champagne. My bill provided him with a substantial amount of mint gum to chew, which was intended to help with the cravings. His craving for alcohol was alleviated by the use of mint gum, which he had previously used to assist in reducing his alcohol consumption. Bill also initiated the practice of storing his beverages in a padlocked refrigerator located in the garage. He believed that his son had attempted to gain access to the refrigerator on one occasion. Despite these circumstances, the situation did not appear to be significantly problematic until in February, my eldest nephew was involved in a physical altercation at school. While he did not instigate the incident, he was subjected to repeated provocation by another student until they ultimately engaged in physical combat. The bully inflicted significant dental trauma on my nephew, resulting in the loss of 2 front teeth, after repeatedly striking him in the face. The incident was precipitated by a specific incident. This incident was preceded by an attack on my younger nephew, who informed me that their older brother had been targeting several individuals at school before being apprehended by the authorities. He exhibited the characteristics commonly associated with a bully, including theft, intimidation, and physical violence. On more than one occasion, he used a small knife to stab bicycle tires. The older brother of a child he had previously harassed then confronted him, resulting in severe injuries. Both of his upper front teeth were knocked out, and his nose was broken. He required medical attention. The boy was transported to the hospital, where an emergency oral surgeon repositioned his teeth, a procedure that also required the use of special braces to maintain the new alignment. Additionally, his nose was reset, and he was placed in a neck brace. As a result of these injuries, the boy was reluctant to be seen by anyone for several months. Despite repeated inquiries, the other child's parents declined to provide any information regarding the incident. However, they did confirm that they had paid at least half of the cost for my nephew's dental and nasal treatments through their insurance. My sister and Bill's insurance plan proved inadequate for covering the remaining expenses. Despite the high copay, the other parents did not file a lawsuit because they were reluctant to appear in court again. The other parents only paid as much as they did because they did not want to be sued. I also contributed to the cost, having retained the $500 that was initially provided to me. After I sued them and decided to return the cash to them to help ease the cost, they still refused to divulge the amount spent on my nephew's nose surgery and 2 front teeth restoration. However, upon subsequent observation of my nephew, it appeared that they had depleted their savings. The incident resulted in significant facial trauma and the necessity for dental wiring. The victim refused to return to school and completed his remaining lessons online with the assistance of a school-provided laptop. The perpetrator, who received a 2-day suspension, was informed that the punishment was the maximum allowable under the circumstances. It is acknowledged that the emotional response to the incident was intense. I am distressed, yet I am aware that my nephew's actions as a bully towards other children have resulted in this outcome. What goes around eventually comes around. Currently, it is summer, and my eldest nephew is largely confined to the house. He will occasionally go out for an hour or 2 to ride his bicycle, but otherwise he remains secluded. Subsequently, he typically secludes himself in his room. Discussions have arisen regarding the potential relocation of my sister and Bill to a closer proximity to their parents, following the conclusion of their son's probationary period. It is understandable that they desire to distance themselves from the current circumstances, given the prevailing sentiment in the neighborhood. The realization of this plan, however, may necessitate an additional year or so, due to financial constraints. In the interim, I have been engaging with my 2 younger nephews, and they have exhibited notable improvements. They have become more respectful and have been permitted to resume their presence in my home. There have been no incidents of misappropriation, and I find their company agreeable. Through the medium of film and digital games, they have reverted to a more positive and respectful disposition. They are attempting to atone for their misdeeds on the rare occasions I interact with my eldest nephew. He has become more cordial and even sought my assistance with his bicycle on one occasion. However, he remains taciturn and reserved. He has been stoically silent for some time now. I am aware that when he reaches the age of 18, he wishes to live a considerable distance from here. We have suggested that he attend a trade school, and he has not expressed any objections to this suggestion. Beyond this, I have been striving to avoid overstepping my role as an uncle, and thus, after all this time, I may have nothing further to report.